Hi, Thaler.
Hi, Jay. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
We're in a very chilly January setting here, and so it's good to have a conversation in a cozy room, even though we're connected electronically.
A cozy conversation about conversation.
Exactly.
Let's get this meta show on your road.
Exactly. Um, I ask you to think right off the bat, first, though, very transparently, about when we thought about doing this conversation series of conversations about conversation. What were you thinking, and where are you at on this project? What do you think about this right now?
I'm very excited to hear about how other people approach speaking and listening. We do it constantly and we don't get to think about it. You and I think about it constantly, since this is what we do professionally, is guide people in speaking and listening. And even we have questions. And um, I know that there are often times where I'll say, how do I say this? Or I could have done this a little bit better. And I come to you. And it occurred to me, if we're coming to each other, let's widen that circle of conversation about conversation and invite more people to be more reflective and to be our guides, and to share this information with the wider audience.
I'm taking some notes, so I know that this is not a canned conversation. This is spontaneous right now. Let me ask you, Thaler, when is a time that you feel like you have used your voice particularly effectively as a communicator in a conversation or a presentation?
Last summer, I spoke at Inspire Fest in Dublin, which is an extraordinary international conference on technology and education and arts. And there are 3,000 people in this beautiful center in Dublin. And I was a closing speaker. I asked people to turn to each other and to share a story, a specific story. And there was all this hubbub about whether this would work with 3,000 people in the audience, and it was electrifying. It worked very well in the moment. Of course, I was on stage and I could see and sense it working. But later that night, late at night at the bar in the hotel, people were running up to me saying, "Oh my God, I have to tell you about the story that I shared with the stranger sitting next to me. Let me tell you what I heard. Thank you so much." And then the next day I was walking around in Dublin. Now, granted, it's not a giant city, but I'm walking through Dublin and I went into a shop and I struck up a conversation with the woman helping me. And I said, "Oh, I'm here. I spoke at Inspire Fest yesterday." She said, "I know, I was in the audience. Let me tell you about the story that I told the person that I was sitting with and the stranger that I met and the story that they told me." And so that was an incredible feedback on empowering people, offering them an invitation to speak to others, and how that invitation, once accepted, was so transformative at such a large scale.
Um, Talk to me about a time or what it's like for you when you've felt heard, or frankly, when you felt unheard.
Several years ago, I joined the board of an organization that I've been active with for many years, and active in the larger issues surrounding the organization. And at the board orientation, we were asked to share our story of our journey and how we got to this board position. We're sitting at this table. And so I shared my story that I thought was fairly impassioned, of my work on the issue and my love for this organization. And at the very close of that story, without missing a beat, the president of the board said, "And you're married, right?"
Mm.
And I was floored. I felt really unheard. I felt like she was listening to hear something, and because she didn't hear it, she had discounted everything that I had said before. And I love my husband very much. People hear me talk about Tom a lot, but Tom wasn't a part of that story. It wasn't a forefronted part of that story. And I bring this up because it always stayed with me. And I shared this story just a few weeks ago at a program I was co-facilitating on listening. And a very wise woman who was participating said, well, maybe she did hear you, Thaler, and maybe she heard very well and wanted to hear even more and asked that question. And another participant said, it's very hard to gauge how people are heard and how people feel unheard. Everyone has a different bar for feeling unheard. And that was really eye and ear opening for me. And it's one of the things I'm taking into this work as we go forward as well, is how do we check in with the people that we're speaking with to make sure that they're heard and that they don't feel unheard.
Sounds a lot more complicated than it might seem on its face.
Speaking and listening is something we do constantly, and yet if we want to do it respectfully and effectively and efficiently, kindly and compassionately, it pays to be intentional and to always be learning about it from different people in different contexts.
What do you think, what would you say you've learned most about conversations as a professional counselor for people, for their communication, and as a student of communication? What do you think is the number one thing that you've learned perhaps in recent years?
The vital role that pausing and listening plays. The little bit of intentionality that goes a very long way.
Anything that you wanted to riff on or improvise around that we haven't discussed yet, Thaler?
I had a wonderful experience last weekend. I am going to be officiating a wedding in June of a lovely young couple that'll both be about 27 when they're married. And I spent 3 hours with them hearing their story, hearing about their shared values, hearing about turning points in their relationship, including the moment that they met and the moment that they knew that they wanted to spend their lives together, hearing about how they wanted what they wanted their wedding to embody, and the invitation that they were offering to the people who would be gathered to share this ceremony. And that was an incredible lesson in listening for me, because I need to take all of that in and write and officiate a ritual that is an absolute reflection of them and that helps or guides everyone who's gathered to understand their role in the marriage and why they were invited into that space.
Talk about complexity. It sounds like that also involves a community conversation with a pair of people. So you're one of the facilitators of that. in a ritualized way. Really interesting.
It's a great honor.
Well, the honor right now is mine. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and thinking and experimenting with this format with me as well, Thaler. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.